And this is Backchannel. It's a whole new thing where you get the chance to join in with this program just by talking to your Amazon Echo device. And you can do that very easily. Just introduce yourself if you haven't already. Ask your device to open Backchannel. The app will open. Once it's done that, she will ask you directly your name and where you're from, and that's it. From that point onwards, you can just chat with the machine and be part of this program without really lifting a finger or typing anything on anything. So whatever we talk about, if you have something to say, you just use the magic word, which is your activation word. Some people call it echo. Other people use the default word. But you've also got the magic word say. If you say, then you can say your message. And then it comes through to me, and then you're part of the program. It's very clever. You're very welcome to join in at any time. We're going to zigzag across the United States, take a look at some of the morning papers, and see what's happening stateside. We are stateside. I'm in Los Angeles, California, by the way. Producer Carla is in London. And whoever you are, wherever you are, you're very welcome to the program this morning. And Backchannel runs all the time. Different hosts all over the US and in Europe as well. And they all bring this show together. So there's always someone here for you to chat to you in your kitchen or wherever you happen to have your Echo show. And if you don't have an Echo show, for example, and let's say you've got just a regular Echo speaker, you can still listen to the show using that. And if you have friends that maybe don't have an Echo device, then you could stream on YouTube. Backchannel has a YouTube channel as well. And all the shows are streamed there live, and you can catch up with shows there as well. So that's all the housekeeping stuff done. It's kind of important that we kind of get on to looking around the US and looking at some of the stories that are making the headlines this morning. And I thought we'd start with the Daily Times. And this is a very interesting story about time is ticking at Rehoboth Beach. Rehoboth Beach, that's right. It approaches an end-of-year deadline for moving Dole's Candyland sign from its original and iconic spot on the boardwalk to a new location. There's something about these kind of seaside towns and their signage, which is like, it's kind of exciting. I don't know if you find this, but like I am a bit of a fan of old signage, especially neon and here in Los Angeles, I mean, we are full of old signage, and it's because it's not a very old town, LA, you know, it's not been like 2 years old. But when you see a sign from the 40s or the 50s or the 60s and it's still there, it's a very kind of powerful reminder of history. I'm a big fan. So this story continues where the sign would end up, has prompted a sometimes emotionally charged debate over the last several months after Dole's Candyland owner Tom moved his business from its original spot to a smaller shop a few doors down. Now, the future of the sign may have become a little clearer. Board president for the local museum announced at a city workshop meeting on Monday that the board will be willing to mount the sign on the side of the museum. You see, this is the local town coming to the rescue of old signage. Who even knew that this was a thing? But apparently it is. There's a lovely little kind of villagey area called Atwater here in Los Angeles where they have very old signs and like local people pay to keep them up above buildings at an angle so that when you're driving, because, you know, America is a driving country. It's all about the car, right? So these huge billboards are part of the national culture, and designing huge billboards that have impact with beautiful topography or interesting photography. These are the things that ultimately are, I don't know, they're just part of the kind of fabric of the US. So if you've ever done a road trip, signage is going to be a big part of your photographic evidence. When you're showing your friends and family, you'll be like, look at that sign. You know, Highway 1, it's all there to be seen. So that's the Daily Times. Let's see what else we have here. Aha. Thank you, Carla. That's exactly what I was looking for. Carla just sent me a document, which means I can actually do this program properly without making it up as I go along. And who's to say I wasn't making it up as I go along? But, you know, we're here. It's begun. It's officially begun. Now I've got the PDF. Everything's about to change. The whole energy of the show is about to increase thanks to the three little letters P, D, F. Um, funny. Okay, is this? Hang on, am I looking at? I think I might be looking at yesterday's. I mean, I'm a changed man. What is the date today anyway? Is it the 10th? Oh, it is the 10th. There we are. Now we're looking at the right PDF. We're on the right day. It's 6 minutes after 9 here on the West Coast. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony. We're going to cut this whole bit out. Okay, let's go back to the newspapers. That was Maryland. So I think where are we going to go to now? Winnipeg, which I've never been to. There's not many places I've been to. I've been to, West Coast, obviously, up and down the West Coast, and some of the East Coast, and Florida, but I don't have much experience of, Middle America. I really wish I did. So the Winnipeg Free Press this morning. Anxiety rises with record classroom outbreaks. Yes, they're saying that COVID-19 outbreaks in classrooms are raising parents' pulses across the province. This is as they await stricter measures to keep students and staff safe. Since Labor Day, there's been outbreaks in a dozen Manitoba learning facilities. In the entire 2020-21 learning facilities, academic year, there were 11 clusters that sparked panic across parents and forced students to learn remotely. So this is the problem that they have, because, I wonder if Winnipeg is one of those places where there's parents picketing because they're refusing to wear masks. Have their kids not wearing masks in school. My daughter is 6. I said to her the other day, because we were talking about her getting vaccinated, and I said, do you realize if you get vaccinated, eventually, once everybody in your class is vaccinated, you won't have to wear a mask anymore? And she went, oh. And I was like, seriously? And she's like, yeah, I really like my masks, because she has a whole set of them now. And it's become part of her face furniture. And it's part of the character. And it's really important to her that she's masked. I think it's fascinating. Can you ever imagine, outside of this, 2-year pandemic so far, that kids would be going to school in masks and we would be wearing masks in shop? I wear the mask all the time. I've taken it off now because I'm in solitary confinement. But effectively, we are... It's just become part of our culture. Unless, of course, you're in Texas. And then if you wear it, you'll get called a snowflake. So that's the front of the Winnipeg Free Press. Also, Health Canada approves Pfizer COVID boosters. That's right, Health Canada has approved the booster of Pfizer and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine for people over the age of 18, though third doses have already been given to high-risk people across the country. I actually got my Moderna booster, was it yesterday or the day before? It was the day before yesterday. And after getting it, I then realized that I'm actually not even in the category yet. They didn't even ask a question. Yep, there you go. There's only 2 people in line. So I am, I'm as safe as houses. Because, I got my first dose in March, my second dose in April. And so it's actually 7 months now since I last had a COVID vaccine. And the Moderna booster is 50 milligrams, and it's a half dose from what I got previously. You get 2 of the full doses in your first, a month apart. And then you get a half dose, which is 50 milligrams. Interestingly, the Pfizer booster is 30 milligrams. So they reckon there might be less side effects with the Pfizer booster than the Moderna booster. And you can mix and match them now as well. And arguably, if you started with a Moderna vaccine, they're kind of saying that if you take a Pfizer booster, then that actually might give you a little bit more protection because it's a different vaccine. So you've got all the protection of Moderna, and then you've added in Pfizer. It's very interesting to me that this is even a thing. It says the booster is identical to the regular Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, and it's to be given at least 6 months after the 2 vaccine doses. Clinical trials have shown side effects more or less the same as those experienced with the original 2 doses of the vaccine. And Health Canada's review found the booster dose met the regulator's safety, efficacy, and quality requirements, according to a news release from the department. So there we go. Jessica's joined the stream this morning. Thank you for being part of the chat. You can do the same. All you have to do is just talk to your Echo Show device, say the usual phrase, which is, open Backchannel, and then boom, I will appear and you can communicate with your device in the usual way. And if you haven't got an Echo Show and maybe you just want to watch on YouTube, I actually watched the YouTube stream on my 55-inch television. And wow, I mean, who knew that I had such a big head? Don't answer that. Also on the front of the Winnipeg Free Press, it's Winnipeg, such a great word. It says, city urged to change vax card policies at arenas. Yes, the city is facing pressure to bring in paid staff to check immunization cards at Winnipeg-operated arenas after complaints volunteers are at risk of hostile encounters and being fined. And with all adults now required to show proof that they're fully vaccinated against COVID-19 to enter city-run rinks, the city of Winnipeg is requiring renters of those facilities to check immunization cards instead of city staff. Very interesting. You know, there's been a huge amount of fake immunization cards doing the rounds. And in Mexico, there was a massive story the other day about this. And the police raided, I don't know, some kind of printing facility where they were printing them. Saying that, I remember when I went for my first vaccination, there was just a whole stack of cards sitting on the desk in CVS, literally just right there. It is so informal being vaccinated in the United States. It is so informal. I was just standing in the middle of the pharmacy and they just like shot me the stack of cards. They're like, oh, which one do you want? I'm like, which one do you want? It's just very funny to me that this is the way it's done. But, you know, and the guy, because they've been getting like vets to do it. I mean, anybody that, and I'm talking about people that look after animals as opposed to people that were in Vietnam. But they've been getting everybody to do it. I'm sure people that served in Vietnam could administer a vaccine. I'm not saying they can't. Please, thank you for your service, Jessica. Okay, let's continue on with this and see where we're at, because I actually have a running order here, which it's on a PDF, incidentally, which is... anyone know what that stands for? I'm sure it's very interesting. Yesterday, we were discussing DVDs, and I don't know where that came from, but I was able to remind us all that it stood for Digital Versatile Disc. I mean, who knew? How did I know that? Just doesn't make sense. Okay, so if you have any idea of what PDF stands for, then just hit me up in the usual way. Just communicate with Backchannel, talk to your Echo Show, use your activation word, then say, and then your message. Thank you. Appreciate that. We're going to go west side to California now for a peek at the Enterprise record, and see what's happening in that particular paper. There we go. The Enterprise record, the finalist for the 2019 Pulitzer Prize for breaking news reporting. And I was saying yesterday how kind of local news, certainly where I'm from, it's like local news has been decimated. And it's really nice to, I mean, America is gigantic, so obviously you have to have local newspapers because every state is different. But for me, this is just a dream to kind of look around and see kind of local news reported in a kind of traditional newspaper format. Love it. Okay, the headline is Judge Rules for City in Lawsuit. The lawsuit between the city of Chico and Chico Scrap Metal. This is what I'm talking about. Chico Scrap Metal is the front page story. That's what I'm talking about. You do not get a story like that on the front of the LA Times. They're a local recycling business that's been at odds with the city for nearly a decade. It's come to an end, and those involved in the litigation are speaking out. I'm going to just move my device up a little bit like this and see if that helps you, because I'm worried that you're going to see just the top of my head. Because I moved the camera up, and I'm worried that... Oh my goodness. Where's all my hair gone? The lawsuit between the city of Chico and the Chico Scrap Metal business has been at odds with the city for nearly a decade. It's come to an end with those involved in the litigation are finally speaking out. Yes, Judge Tamara Mossbarger ruled against Chico's Scrap Metal. Now that surprises me because the way this story was set up, I actually thought that the scrap metal business was going to come out on top. And here we are. They were suing the city regarding its location on East 20th Street and whether it would operate there on October 27. Well, since the litigation's been ongoing for so long, there's been multiple seat changes in the Chico City Council, many of which were part of the lawsuits. So funny. This is such a great story. The former Chico mayor, Anne Schwab, expressed frustration in Chico's scrap metal amid the ruling. If I was going to predict what we'd be talking about this morning, because we don't choose, the newspapers obviously are printed. Some journalist somewhere has gone to the scrap metal business and written this up, asked questions, taken notes. It's ended up on the newspaper. I'm now sitting here reading the newspaper to you. I would never have predicted that we'd be looking at a court case between a local scrap metal business and the city council. I just wouldn't. It's actually more flattering, this angle, having the camera slightly higher up, because I've got like 6 chins normally, and here I now have 1 chin. This is a recommendation to anybody that does a Zoom call. Someone was asking me yesterday about Backchannel, and they said, what's it like to host the show? And I said, it's literally like being on a 2-hour Zoom call. When you're on one of those multiple Zooms, there's like 30 people, and you don't get to say much because it's a big group session. Except I'm having to do all the talking. But you're welcome to join in at any time. You can join the stream in the usual way. Just start your Echo Show device. Just say open Backchannel. Introduce yourself. If you've done that before, you won't have to do it again. It just happens. And after that, well, that's it. You're away. Just use your activation word, then the word say, and then your message. You can join in with us here on Backchannel. It's 9:17 Pacific, 12:17 Eastern. I'm Anthony. This is The Anthony Davis Show. Monday through Friday, between 9 and 11. There's an education story on the front of the Enterprise record this morning, which is building real-world experience. It says students at Prospect High School are getting first-hand experience with construction. They've teamed up with Chico company Valley... I was going to say, if they've teamed up with the local scrap metal firm, then that would have been funny. Right? That would have been like somebody at the city council would have had something to say about that. They've teamed up with a company called Valley Contractors Exchange to deliver hands-on construction education to students. And students are going to earn Work-Ready National Center for Construction Education and Research certifications. Try saying that after a couple of shandies. Prospect High School launched its construction career and technical education program in August. There you go. It's wonderful. My daughter started watching this engineering program. It's like a kids' TV show, but it's adults. There's no children in the show, and it's adults doing engineering projects. I don't know what it's called. I keep missing the start. But she basically watches engineers, and the woman this morning was a black female who got to talk to the camera and say, I'm championing black female engineers, which is obviously the right thing to do. And she was talking about all the prejudice she's experienced in the engineering industry. Well, of course she has. But it's just kind of wonderful to know that engineering it's like trades coming back. Because I was worried that my daughter was going to grow up to be a social media manager, and I really didn't want that for her. I'd much rather she had an engineering degree than like just learning how to put 9 Instagram posts together to make one big picture. Also, on the front of the newspaper, Jerry Brown, he's the former governor, isn't he? He's focusing on saving forests from fire. Yes, as smoke lingered in the air amid another destructive California wildfire season, the former governor, Jerry Brown, invited a group to his ranch for an urgent conversation. What more could be done to save California's forests from wildfires? And it says the reality of what's become an annual fire devastation for the state has become more a part of Brown's life since he built his retirement home on the stretch of land where his great-grandfather settled in the 1850s. It's about 60 miles north of Sacramento. You probably know this. Jessica and Rihanna, who are currently on the chat with us, both in California, both understand the concept of living in a wildfire city. And I've seen it here, even in Hollywood. Sometimes Griffith Park, which is where the observatory is and where the LA Zoo is, that's been on fire like 2 or 3 times since I've lived here. And you see it burning in the distance, and you see the airplanes going overhead, the fire planes that are scooping up water from the Hollywood Reservoir and dumping it. There's a whole reservoir in the middle of Hollywood. Who knew? So there we go. That's how the Enterprise record looks on this Wednesday morning. Oh, it's Wednesday. That's like a hump day, isn't it? I've never really been a big fan of that phrase. Some people swear by it. You know, it basically means that you're like halfway to the weekend because the weekdays are just too terrible to enjoy. So you're halfway to the weekend. That's what the whole hump day thing means. And I'm not so sure. I think we should try and enjoy our weekdays as much as our weekends. I mean, mine are pretty much the same. I've never really differentiated a weekend and a weekday. But, you know, it's different for everybody. I appreciate that. Okay, let's see where else we're at this morning. What were we looking at? Oh, yeah, we were looking at talking about schools and talking about wildfires. And we're going to go to Kansas next. We really are zigzagging across the entire country. This is the Lawrence Journal World. This is the Kansas local. It's been published since 1891, which was 9 minutes before I had my dinner last night. You can think about that one. Legislators want to move against vaccine rules this month. Yes, Republican lawmakers in Kansas are pushing to enact new state laws before Thanksgiving to protect workers financially if they refuse to comply with federal mandates to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Top GOP legislative leaders called on Tuesday for lawmakers to have a special session to consider proposals making it easier for workers to claim religious exemptions from vaccine mandates and providing unemployment benefits to workers who are fired for refusing to get inoculated. I mean, I just don't get it. You know, because the pandemic's been going for 2 years now. So at what point do you just give in and be like, yeah, there is a pandemic? Because I actually lost a very good friend over this. One of my best friends in England. We were very close. He used to come here, visit me all the time. He just didn't believe the pandemic existed. He actually thought that the whole thing was like a conspiracy. And we talked about it, and we kind of fell out because I wasn't really concentrating when we were talking. I was walking, and I wasn't, focused. And I accidentally told him that he'd been radicalized, and that did not go down very well. And so anyway, we've since made up, and I phoned him and we chatted and we made up. But he won't get vaccinated. He just won't do it. And all the people I've spoken to who are in this position, I don't get a decent reason. There's no good reason. It's like, have you had your measles vaccine, your mumps vaccine, your rubella vaccine, your polio vaccine, your tetanus vaccine? You had all of those. They weren't a problem for you. What is it about this one? And it's sad to say that I think it was the timing of the former president being in the White House at the same time as a pandemic beginning. That was the fundamental problem. He wasn't into it. And also, the other thing, it was an election year. The campaigning for the election had already started. So for him, the pandemic was very inconvenient to really kind of promoting himself and wanting to get re-elected. And it was a distraction. So it became politicized. But pandemics are actual things, they're real things. They happen all the time. That tea is very cold. I made a few mistakes this morning in my little regime. Normally I bring down a tumbler, one of those keep it hot tumblers. Today, I went with straight porcelain. It's like drinking out of a urinal. I'm not doing any more of that. And I also made the mistake of putting a sweater on. My usual costume for this show, the costume designer who designed me this black t-shirt. Also, if I I put a sweater on, and that was a mistake because now I'm starting to chuck up in here a little bit. So at some point during the show, there's going to have to be a sweater removal sequence. And you have the choice. You can either be part of that, or I could just turn off the camera for a moment, or you could look away. Because you know what's going to happen. The sweater will come off, and then half of my guts will spill out. And that always seems to happen to me in parking lots. It's a whole other conversation. Also on the front of the Lawrence Journal World, city to craft long-term program for patios downtown. Here we go again, with local stories in local papers that would never make the national press. It's a dream. With considerations given to issues such as aesthetics and parking, the City of Lawrence will look to develop a long-term version of a program that has allowed downtown businesses to construct patios and outdoor dining areas in parking stalls during the coronavirus pandemic. And as part of its meeting on Tuesday, the Lawrence City Commission voted 5-0 to authorize the development of long-term parklet program. A parklet program. They directed staff to consider elements such as fees, design, standards, safety, and parking in the new regulations. Well, there was me thinking about, it being people's rear patios in their own gardens. And how short-sighted of me. This is a wonderful community project, effectively. And I don't know if you feel the same as me, but since the pandemia began, certainly here in Los Angeles, the outdoor dining thing is wonderful. Why were we not eating outdoors all the time before anyway? It's so beautiful to be part of nature instead of being stuck inside a space that's got no ventilation. I've become much more of a hypochondriac since this all began, I wear a mask in bed. It used to be an eye mask. Now I just pull it down to cover my nose and mouth so I don't give myself coronavirus. And I feel like outdoor, I've only really eaten out. In the last 2 years, I've eaten out maybe half a dozen times in restaurants. I'm still not ready. Even with my 3 shots. I'm still not quite ready to integrate. Because before the pandemic, I had to come up with an excuse why I didn't want to go out with people for dinner. And now I don't. Now I'm like, COVID. It's great. It'll be like 2030. We'll almost be hitting our climate change targets. And still I'll be using COVID as an excuse for not coming out for dinner. It's just the way it is. So that's a nice story there. Lovely also on the front of the Lawrence Journal World. I wish they said kind of where the Lawrence Journal World is from. I know you've written it down, Carla, but it's like I wish it was a bit more. I wish it had a strapline that said local news for. Well, I don't know that Lawrence is in Kansas. I can't know. There's 50 states. I can't know every town. I remember it's Kansas now. We spoke about it about 10 minutes ago. But my point is, it's for someone like me that's like, I'm on the fly here. Give me a break. A restaurant's sprawling, colourful garden used to bloom where an apartment complex and parking lot now sit in East Lawrence, a fact that wasn't lost on developer Tony Krnich. K-R-S-N-I-C-H. How do you reckon that's pronounced? Krasnich. What a great name! He's paid tribute to the garden by commissioning a pair of enormous painted flowers to adorn the complex brick exterior. And there's a photograph of him. I'd turn this round and show it to you, but and if we had, a slightly different technology, we'd flash it up on the screen right now. But basically, it's a giant brick wall. And on it are painted some huge sunflowers. And it's absolutely beautiful. I'm really going to have to take this sweater off in a minute. I'm just saying. It's like, I'm starting to feel the effects of my COVID booster shot because I've got a sweater on. They say that, don't they? They're like, when you go, they say take off your sweater to expose your arm. They mean keep your sweater off for a week. That's what they mean. So that's the Lawrence newspaper in Kansas. Journal World. Let's see what else we have here. I think we're moving to the New York Times now. Isn't the New York Times behind a paywall these days? It's such a shame when these newspapers, the LA Times is like this as well, where you really want to get into a story and then it's behind the paywall. And one of my favorite newspapers is The Guardian, and there's no paywall. I actually pay for it randomly. I mean, I decided that I thought it was so good that I do pay my annual dues for it. But there's no paywall. They just trust that if you think it's good enough, you'll stump up some cash for it, which is, I think, a better way of going about it. Okay, New York Times on this Wednesday morning. It's 9:31, by the way, Pacific, 12:31 Eastern. And this is Backchannel, the Anthony Davis Show. It says so down there. And thank you for joining me this morning. We're looking at the newspapers. We're like zigzagging across the United States, picking up local papers in local towns. Moderna moves for total credit in vaccine patent. Yeah, you see, I'm a thoroughly Moderna man, and I'll be honest, I've not been particularly happy with Moderna. The way that I think they've been quite selfish with their technology. Anyway, let me read on. Moderna and the National Institutes of Health are in a bitter dispute over who deserves credit for inventing the central component of the company's powerful coronavirus vaccine, a conflict that has broad implications for the vaccine's long-term distribution and billions of dollars in future profits. There's the magic word, you see. Profit. The vaccine grew out of a 4-year collaboration between Moderna and the NIH, the government's biomedical research agency, a partnership that was widely hailed when the shot was found to be highly effective. A year ago this month, the government called it the NIH Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. Well, the agency says 3 scientists at its vaccine research center worked with Moderna scientists to design the genetic sequence that prompts the vaccine to produce an immune response and should be named on the principal patent application. However, Moderna disagrees. And it's now, unbelievable, in a July filing with the US Patent and Trademark Office, the company said it's reached a good faith determination these individuals did not co-invent the component in question. It's not a very Moderna attitude, is it? You know, we're all supposed to be like together these days. Because, the issue I have with Moderna is that so many poor countries have no vaccine. And Moderna could have given the recipe to African nations, and they could have produced Moderna locally. And they're just not doing that. And it's beggars belief to me that healthcare companies have actually made more money since the pandemic started than ever in history, like 3 or 4 times more profit. Profiting from a pandemic blows my tiny mind. But this is capitalism, isn't it? In the West. Also on the front of the New York Times, in France, the people the climate summit forgot is the headline, and it says just 75 miles separate a provincial town. The town is called Montargis in France. A provincial town from Paris, but the capital is all about a renewable energy revolution. The talk is of how it costs people way too much. It says, we want to go too far, said Jean-Pierre Dor, a conservative lawmaker with a lot of angry constituents. People are being pushed to the limit. You see, this is one of these small towns that's taken it upon itself to just go completely green. And they are cropping up. There are places all over the world that are trying their hardest. They're like forgetting, national policy. They're like, we can do this. And it takes an army, but it takes individuals, right? 3 years ago, Montargis became a center of the Yellow Vest social uprising, an angry protest movement over an increase in gasoline taxes that was sustained, sometimes violently, for more than a year by a much broader sense of alienation felt by those in the outlying areas that France calls its periphery. Well, the uprising was rooted in a class divide that exposed the resentment of many working-class people whose livelihoods are threatened by the clean energy transition against the metropolitan elites, especially in Paris, who can afford electric cars and bicycle to work, unlike those in the countryside. So I wondered maybe if you live in a smaller town, and if your local town has made any effort whatsoever to kind of create its own green revolution. Do you feel that you would be willing to join in with that, to be part of a local revolution rather than a national revolution? Because my concern is that we've already, the Paris Climate Accord that was 5 years ago, and of course the COP26 in Glasgow this week and last week, all of the targets that they've been talking about achieving, we're not gonna meet those targets. They're all just, it's We're not even close. But that's only if the government are the ones who kind of lead the charge. But in reality, we as individuals, we talked a little bit about this on Monday, we ourselves are able and capable of making some individual changes ourselves. So if that's something you're prepared to do, I was telling you that I drive an electric car, I don't eat meat, I don't eat dairy, I recycle, I don't use the air conditioning, even on very hot days. I just try and, I don't make unnecessary journeys. And I'm still using COVID as an excuse for that. Because that's the whole thing, isn't it? COVID enabled the whole planet to reduce its carbon emissions. And now they've studied this. Since the pandemic was at its worst, now emissions are back up to the levels they were at in 2019. Exactly the same. No change. And it's tragic. Excuse me. I just had one of those moments, and I think this happens to you as you get older, where you've lived through so many decades that I completely forgot what decade we were in. I was like, are we in 2002? Because 2002 was a really good year for me. I remember it really well. And I was like, wow, are we really was that 19 years ago? I was doing this very job then. I mean, not Backchannel, but a version of it. I was still in a little box. My whole life, I've basically been recording with microphones in my bedroom since I was a child. And here I am at 46, I'm doing exactly the same thing. It's either very cute or a little annoying, depending on where you're at. Okay, we're still on the New York Times. One more story from here. Lack of truckers is choking the U.S. supply chain. Yes, it says facing more than $50,000 in student debt, Michael Gary dropped out of college, took a truck driving job in 2012. It paid the bills, he said, and he could reduce his expenses if he lived mostly out of his truck. But over the years, the job strained his relationships. He was away from home for weeks at a time and could not prioritize his health. It took more than 3 years to schedule an optometry appointment, which he kept cancelling because of his irregular work hours. Well, he quit on the 6th of October. He said, I had no personal life outside of driving a truck. I do think that, when I've done road trips and stopped at truck stops and, there's like a little motel or a little restaurant, a little diner, and you see these incredible, because American trucks are so exciting to me because they are gigantic. These articulated trucks. And the cabs, every cab is pimped and bespoke to every driver. And what's the deal with that? Do you own your cab? Do you lease your cab? I mean, how much right do you have to kind of pimp that thing? Because obviously the load that you're picking up, invariably containers from ports and shifting them to other ports, those belong to the shipping companies. But in terms of the cab, how much leeway do you get to kind of really pimp your own cab? I'm asking you, Jessica, and anybody else who's joining the chat today here on Backchannel. It's almost 20 minutes to 10 Pacific. I'm Anthony Davis. It's the Anthony Davis Show, and you can watch us on your Echo Show device. You can watch on YouTube if you want to stream on the Backchannel YouTube channel. But also you can just listen to this show on any Amazon speaker. You just ask it to open Backchannel and you'll be able to hear this program. You won't be able to kind of do the same level of interaction that you can with an Echo Show device where you can see me. Now, I am much better looking without pictures. So if you're listening to this, well, maybe that's going to be the best thing for us. If you wanted a glimpse, just get a quick look and then you'd be like, what? And you go back to listening audio only. That's completely up to you. But I'm a very interesting looking character. Face for radio, as they say. So it says truck drivers have been in short supply for years, but a wave of retirements, combined with those simply quitting for less stressful jobs, is exacerbating the supply chain crisis in the United States, leading to empty store shelves, panicked holiday shoppers, and congestion at ports. Warehouses around the country are overflowing with products, and delivery times have stretched to months from days or weeks for many goods. This is a big issue. I mean, and it's not just happening here in the US. The whole of Europe has come to a standstill over truck drivers and the shortage of them. And in England, where I'm from, they had no gas recently. They had to get the military in to deliver gas because there was no truck drivers to be able to deliver gas to petrol stations. So this is and it's been a combination of COVID causing this. In Europe, it's Brexit as well. It's been a big issue, for the UK. So, yeah, we've been looking at that, and I'm very interested to kind of get your views on this. If you yourself are a truck driver, driven a truck, been in a truck. At this stage, I'll even take someone who's actually seen a truck. You know how to get in touch. Just say the name that wakes up your device, then the word say, and then your message. And you can join the stream here. Rihanna's joining us, Jessica's joining us, and you can do the same. So thank you very much for spending your morning with Backchannel. You got me until 11 Pacific. That's 2 o'clock Eastern. And then your pal Hal will be here. It's kind of how it works, We're just it's like a baton relay of hosts in the privacy of their own spaces. Okay, let's go back to some of these newspapers. Let me see where we're at. We're still on the... here we go. We're still on the New York Times. The story that we wanted to look at here, the most interesting story for me, I think, is... where is it? I thought it was on the front of the New York Times. Oh, yeah, there it is. They've stuck it over in the corner. I would have given it a slightly bigger section. It says a federal judge on Tuesday night rejected a bid by former President Donald J. Trump to keep secret papers about his actions and conversations leading up to and during the January 6 attack on the Capitol by his supporters. In a 39-page ruling, Judge Tanya S. Chutkan of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia held that Congress's constitutional oversight powers to obtain the information prevailed over Mr. Trump's residual secrecy powers, especially because the incumbent, President Joe Biden, agreed that lawmakers investigating the January 6 riot should see the files. I mean, there's so much to say about this story, isn't there? Because, this is the kind of thing that it really is going to cause division. But you really need to take your partisan hat off for a second and just think about, American democracy as a whole. And forget who you support, and it's do you want to live in a democratic country? And do you want presidents to be able to overturn elections? Is that what you want? Is that the kind of country you want to live in? Because that happens in other countries. You don't have to go far to see that happen. And some of those countries were democracies, and the democracy collapsed. And on January 6th, maybe this is not reported enough, but we were this close to the loss of democracy in the United States. If Mike Pence had fallen foul of the pressure to overturn the election, then that is because, it wasn't even close, the election. There was 15 million votes in it, and there was the popular vote as well. So it's this is not even, and all of the recounts that they've done, and all of the challenges that they've done in court have been thrown out. Even the Supreme Court, which is packed with conservatives, were not prepared to overturn this. Because it wasn't, if it was close, if there was 300 votes in it, then fine. But we're talking about tens of millions of votes. And so we came this close to democracy, which is where the people vote and there is an outright winner, being undermined. And that would have meant that the West, the famous free world, this famous democratic society, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe the Democrats shouldn't be called the Democrats. Maybe there are people on the right who feel like democracy and Democrats is too similar a word, and that's why they don't like democracy, because it sounds a bit like Democrats. I mean, it might sound crazy, but I do think there's some truth in it. It's a little bit like Antifa. I think that word was chosen. It was actually chosen by the right. It's a right-wing trope. It stands for anti-fascist. Well, I'm anti-fascist, and hopefully you are too, so we're all Antifa. But Antifa was chosen as a word because I think it sounds a little bit like some kind of Middle Eastern word, like a Muslim word, right? And so consequently, there are people who think Antifa. I mean, Donald Trump even designated Antifa to be a terrorist organization. It's not an organization. It doesn't even exist. There's no website. There's no gatherings or groups. It's been invented. When there's a group of people doing a free protest, they're Antifa. Yeah, they are. They're all anti-fascists. And they're protesting against fascism. And do you know what fascism is? Trying to overthrow an election. That's what fascism is. It couldn't be clearer. It's not even... So anyway, I'm just saying to you that I really feel like all of us need to get behind this investigation, because it's irrelevant who wins and who loses when you're talking about the very fabric of democracy. That's what's important. That who you vote for, if they are the majority, then they win. And I'm very happy for any side to win. I'm not a citizen, so I don't get a vote in America. So, it's not really my department. But I did move here because it was a free country and a democratic country. And the democratic system worked. Your right to a free vote, your right to have your vote counted, and your right to be listened to, not ignored or marginalized. It's interesting. But it's very sad that it's been politicized. COVID's been politicized and voting's been politicized. And, the Voting Rights Act, I think, should have been the first piece of legislation that Biden got in. Not infrastructure. It should have been voting rights, because that's fundamental. You can't have infrastructure without a free vote. And if you go to Texas or Arizona or these places that are changing voting rules to make it harder to vote, why would you want it to be harder to vote? It should be so easy. They even politicized the postal vote, the mail-in voting. Well, mail-in voting is normal. It's just normal. It's happens all over the world, to be able to cast a vote from home by filling in a form, that's a very standard practice all over the world. And to say that in some way that is open to fraud it just makes no sense. And they don't send out ballots, They kept saying, they're sending ballots out to dead people. They don't send out ballots. Not a solitary ballot was sent out. They send out applications. They send out an application. Then you apply for a ballot. No ballots were sent out to dead people. It just doesn't happen. And then, of course, there's the voting age. The point at which we are allowed to vote. They reduced it. Where I'm from, they reduced it, I think, from 18 to 17 or 16. Carla, do you know? Is it 16 now? I think it might be. Yeah. Here, what's the voting age in the United States? Is it 17? 18? Maybe you can tell me. I don't know. I'm definitely past the voting age. That's for certain. You can send a message to your device. All you have to do is say your activation word, followed by say, followed by your message. Very easy. Just pop up. Oh, apparently where I'm from in the UK, they're still debating it. It's currently 18. It was years ago they were having this debate about reducing it to 16, and I was certain that they've agreed 17. Okay, fine, we'll do 17. I mean, the smoking age in the UK is 16, right? And the drinking age in the UK is 18. I mean, here in America, what I think you can. What age do you have to be to own a firearm in America? Is that 21? Interesting. So I'll just continue with the story that's on the front of the New York Times. It says Trump sued to block the release of materials claiming presidential executive privilege. But the judge stated his position that he may override the express will of the executive branch appears to be premised on the notion that his executive power exists in perpetuity, but presidents are not kings. And plaintiff is not president. Well, that told him. I mean, Steve Bannon was claiming presidential privilege, and he didn't even work in the White House for the last 3 years. He left in the first year of the presidency. I mean, it's beggars belief. So anyway, that's a very big story, and that's on the front of the New York Times this morning. So I'm kind of just, I'm always interested in these types of debates, but I'm very conscious of how divided America is. And the moment that you take a position, people just assume that you're on one side or the other. And the point that I keep reiterating is that when you're talking about democracy, which is freedom, which is your right to a vote, which is the whole point of a kind of modern democratic society, it's irrelevant. And, years ago, before the whole Trump movement, Republicans played by the rules. The Bush presidencies, they played by the rules. And when they lost, they were like, we lost, and they conceded. This is a very new thing, this whole thing of not conceding and then encouraging a stampede on the US Capitol. Be strong. I'm going to go with you. Except he didn't. So the investigation now is really about what was he doing during that time? Where was he? Who was he communicating with? And why was it that the National Guard were not called in? Why did it take 4 hours for the police to get control? Why? Well, it was longer than 4 hours. I think it was 4 hours before the police even showed up. This is additional troops outside of the Capitol Police who were overrun in minutes. Who was it that didn't react? I mean, I guess it goes all the way up to the president. If the Capitol's under attack, then surely it's the president's the one who's like, okay, bring on the cavalry. Apparently, according to all of the coverage, he was loving it. Because people were doing what he asked them to, taking back the vote. Some people just can't lose. Some people are just really bad losers. And it's really important for us to learn what it's like to lose. It's as important as winning. And the thing I find really interesting is I don't think he really wanted to win in the first place. Like 5 years ago, I don't think he really wanted to win. Gave me the impression that he was pretty surprised. He was like, really? Okay. But I can do this. So, let me know your view. I'm still waiting to know what the voting age in the US is, and how young you can be to cast your vote. You can let me know by getting involved, communicating with Backchannel. Just say your activation word, followed by say, followed by your message, and it'll just pop up right in front of me, as if by magic. So, I think that's kind of the newspapers done now. I think have we covered all of the newspapers, Carla? I think we probably have. So thank you very much for those, and your bits and pieces. We've been talking a little bit about the Capitol riot, and there's one little additional thing about Benny Thompson. He's the Select Committee subpoena they've now subpoenaed 10 more people. Yesterday they announced, 2 days ago they announced 6 more people, and then today they've announced, or yesterday or last night they announced 10 more people. And Benny Thompson is the chairman of this select committee, and he announced that they've issued subpoenas to 10 former administration officials as part of its investigation into the January 6 attack on the US Capitol and its causes. The committee is demanding records and testimony from witnesses, including individuals who served as White House officials at the time of the attack on the Capitol on the 6th of January. And Chairman Thompson issued a statement that says, the Select Committee wants to learn every detail of what went on in the White House on January 6 and in the days beforehand. We need to know precisely what role the former president and his aides played in efforts to stop the counting of the electoral votes, and if they were in touch with anyone outside the White House attempting to overturn the outcome of the election. So, it's so massive. I never thought in my lifetime that I would see something like this. A former president or an existing president at the time attempting to overturn the results. It's not like Nixon and Watergate. He was like pressured to resign, and he resigned. But he didn't. He pushed it quite a long way, but there were tapes. There was recordings in the Oval Office, and they were used as evidence against him, as we know. And the tapes from the hotel. We know the story now, but that was really as close as we got to this event in American history. So the people that have been requested or subpoenaed: Nicholas Luna, who served as the former president's personal assistant. He was in the Oval Office the morning of January 6. Molly Michael, she was a special assistant to the president. Benjamin Williamson, he was deputy assistant to the president. Christopher Liddell, former White House deputy chief of staff. John McEntee, former White House personnel director. Keith Kellogg, giant cornflake. No, I'm kidding. He served as the Vice President Pence's national security advisor. Kayleigh McEnany, she's the former White House press secretary. You'll remember her because she was the one who effectively ended press conferences. There was Sean Spicer, there was somebody else, then she was on, and she was actually very good. She was very, very eloquent. Hardly anything she said was true, but she was very, quick-witted. But when she was the press secretary, they decided to stop doing press conferences. That was it. Which to me goes back to this anti-fascist movement that they might call Antifa. Fascism is no press conferences. It's what it is. Stephen Miller, he served as senior advisor to the former president by his own account, participated in events to spread false information about alleged voter fraud in the 2020 election, as well as efforts to encourage state legislatures to alter the outcome of the election by appointing alternate slates of electors. Cassidy Hutchinson, she's been subpoenaed, served as special assistant to the president for legislative affairs. And finally, Kenneth Klukowski, former senior counsel to the Assistant Attorney General, Jeffrey Clark. He was involved in drafting a letter that urged legislatures in certain states to delay certification of the election. So those are the latest subpoenas. Join us tomorrow for more subpoenas. We're gonna look at the truckers story in just a moment, because we were talking earlier about the shortage of truckers across not just the US but right across the rest of the world as well, because of COVID, and in the case of Europe because of Brexit. And I'm very interested in how this is going to affect us. And Biden yesterday went and met, we mentioned this yesterday, Biden went and met the bosses of the major stores, of Walmart and Target, and talked to them about the supply chain issues and how he's going to try and make sure that there is enough goods on the shelves for the holiday season. Because, God forbid, we won't be able to give gigantic Christmas presents this year. Maybe this is all part of it. Maybe we're supposed to cut down on our spending and cut down on our gifting and be more environmentally conscious. I'm just throwing this out there. But maybe Biden shouldn't have gone and talked to Target and Walmart and Home Depot and all of these giant places, because he's encouraging the enlargement of America's carbon footprint. By buying this stuff that's imported from China, by buying all this garbage. I buy toys for my kids all the time. It's all garbage. It's molded plastic made in the Far East. It's not American handmade goods. So why is it that Biden's at the climate conference one minute saying we're going to do our best to reduce carbon emissions and meet our responsibilities, and the next minute he's going to Walmart and Target and saying there better be a lot of crap on the shelves for Christmas, brought in from miles away on shipping containers? It's very interesting to me that maybe capitalism overrides climate efforts. Maybe he's not putting two and two together. Maybe we're so used in America to having everything all the time when we want it, that the idea of going without and not being able to get a Christmas tree, because that's another thing that there'll be a shortage of at Christmas, is the trees. the plastic ones and the real ones. But I mean, what are we doing? Are you prepared to go without this holiday season, knowing that it might actually be better for the planet? Let me know in the usual way. Use your activation word. It might be echo or the default female name, followed by say, followed by your message. And join me here on Backchannel. It's just after 10 Pacific, just after 1 Eastern. I'm Anthony. This is the Anthony Davis Show here on Backchannel. And we've been looking through the morning papers, zigzagging across the United States and talking about all of these interesting stories and how they're very interesting for me to see how similar stories are presented in different states. Always a slightly local skew and a political skew in many ways. And asking about truck drivers and the shortage of truck drivers, because many have quit the business because they can't afford to be in that job anymore. And it's a very lonely job being a driver, a long-distance lorry driver or truck driver. It really is very hard. I mean, can you imagine what it was like doing it before FaceTime? I mean, they used to use the citizen band radio in Europe. What's it called here? Is it called? Must have a different name in the US. It was called CB radio, citizen band, where you would talk to other truckers and you'd all have a handle. The handle was your name, so you'd be called Apple 71. That was actually my stepfather's handle when he was a taxi driver. So that's why it's very poignant in our family. Apple 71. Apple 71, POB. It's very interesting to me I wonder if that whole world still exists in the trucking community, if they're still using those citizen band radios with giant antennas on the roofs of their cab. I have to censor myself when I speak American now. I'm speaking American, incidentally, because in the English language, British English, I would have said aerial. And I said that to an American friend recently. They were like, what's an aerial? Not a word here. Antenna. See? So I'm bilingual now. It's like a whole new thing. I'm so proud of myself. My whole life, I've wanted to be bilingual. And it's not actually been that difficult to learn a whole new language. So, have you ever been a truck driver? Do you have a family member that is? Is this shortage of goods affecting how you shop? Are you maybe doing your holiday season shopping early? And are you getting Christmas presents ready now? Wrapping them? Making a list? Checking it twice? And maybe you've been relying more than usual on local and independent stores instead of shopping online. Maybe we were talking earlier about having a new attitude towards the climate and doing your little bit in your local town. And do you think you could do all of your shopping at local shops like physical retail stores instead of having to go online? I mean, I'm a bad person because I get everything from Amazon, but I never shop in the main Amazon store. I shop in the Amazon warehouse, which is used and return goods. And it's a little cheaper as well. And this is like my hot tip. If you don't know about this, you haven't done it before, it's going to change your life. I've changed many a life with this advice. You see the regular price on the Amazon's page on the website. You scroll down a bit, it says new and used, from, and then there'll be a cheaper price. You click on that and it gives you a whole list of used and new prices from other suppliers. But the one you want to choose is the top one, says Amazon Warehouse, and it'll either be in fair condition, acceptable condition, good condition, very good condition, or like new. And that's what you have the choice, and the prices are affected by that. And I always go for good, depending on what it is. If it's like toilet paper, I choose like new. So naughty, aren't we? So naughty. So yeah, give it a go. But the reason I do that, it's not just for saving money, mainly. But also, the stuff's just going to end up in landfill otherwise. It's literally going to end up in the garbage. Buried. So, you really do have a choice. And Amazon encourage you to buy from the warehouse. That's the great thing about them, is that they're doing their bit It's like a climate pledge. I think they actually call it climate pledge now. So if you look on Amazon's website, when you do delivery options now, they tell you there's literally a climate pledge on there. And I'm trying to do this thing now called like a Amazon Day Deliveries. Do you know about this? So instead of getting a delivery like next day, sometimes same day, you can choose to get a delivery on just one day of the week. So you do all of your shopping through the week. I'm on it every day, buying stuff every day. And then on a Wednesday is my Amazon delivery day. And that's the day the stuff arrives. All in like one delivery so that the UPS guy or the Prime guy doesn't have to drive every time to my door. I think it's very clever. I'd like them to do more. I wish the UPS van was electric. I wish the Prime van was electric. And they are trying to do these things, and they will. That could be a rule. I think that's happening in Europe. They're trying to make all delivery vehicles, commercial vehicles, they're trying to get them to be electric because then they can set a precedent. And also, a lot of them use diesel as opposed to gas. And that puts out a disgusting smush when they take off on a cold day. So that's a good place to start, I would have thought. So, yeah, is this something you've noticed, the lack of supply? I was in Target with the kids the other day and I was looking at toys on the shelves and there were a few gaps. Where normally it's just packed, there was quite a few gaps. And I was thinking, I wonder if that's to do with the shortage of truck drivers. But this does kind of present this dichotomy which we spoke about earlier, which is maybe we should not be shopping this year like we have been. This is the year of the COP26 climate conference in Glasgow. This is the year that we should be changing our habits, breaking the cycle. This is the year that it's time to say, no, we're not going to buy stuff that's just it's just trash. The packaging is so good. That's the thing. I buy like doll's house stuff for my daughter. The packaging is so good. They really make it so delicious. What did she get? The Hatchimals. She's big into Hatchimals. It's literally a plastic egg with some more plastic inside it. And inside that, there's more plastic. She loves it. The branding is so good. But if I said to her, darling daughter, this is just like molded plastic, which is a not environmentally friendly product. It's probably traveled 15,000 miles to get here, to be with you. Do you think she might, because kids are much more conscious about climate now, do you think she might be like, something? I don't think I need this stuff anymore. Do you think we could put this on kids? Do you think a 6-year-old girl would be able to make a climate change-based decision about what she wants for Christmas? I think they can. I actually think that they're able to. She says stuff to me sometimes and I'm like, what? They're so evolved now. They're so smart. So we've been talking about how you might change your shopping habits in the holiday season. Also asking if the supply chain issues are affecting how you shop. Are you getting Christmas presents ready early? As a precaution, really. I am aware now that now is probably the time to do your shopping, whether it be on Amazon or whether it be at the local store. COVID has decimated local stores. I walk along the high streets here and they're just, half the shops are boarded up. So we really have to think about how we're going to redo this. And I was saying earlier that, Biden talking to Walmart and to Target and the big stores and effectively saying, you got to make sure there's stuff on the shelves. To me, that is a total contradiction to his climate change pledges. Riyadh, thank you for joining the stream, joining the chat, being part of Backchannel. Nice to know that you are here this morning. It's 10 after 10 Pacific, 10 after 1 Eastern. And this is the Anthony Davis Show on Backchannel. And you can join in the usual way. You just talk to your device, activation word, echo, or the default word followed by say, and then your message. And that's how you join in. And if you don't have an Amazon device and you want to watch on YouTube, well, of course, the stream is available there for you as well. And as I say, I watched a couple of other people's shows on my giant TV, and I was like, wow, it's quality. So you can watch it on your Echo Show. Riyadh's is 10 inches, mine is 5 inches, but I've also got a 55-inch offering in the living room, just so you know. We've been talking about how the US is dealing with a shortage of 80,000 truckers. This is a big story coming out of the US. It says in an empty car park on the parking lot. Let me change this because I'm reading this from a UK site, from the BBC actually. In an empty parking lot on the outskirts of New York, instructors at Sunny Truck Driving School put students through their paces. They're training a new generation of truck drivers, more commonly called truck drivers. That was a double, because in my head I translated lorry drivers into American English, and then they corrected it and gave us the American English, which is why we ended up with 2 lots of truck drivers. I can only apologize. They're doing this to help fill the gaps in a nationwide driver shortage, a situation that's adding to the country's supply chain problems. Now, this shortage of drivers is not new, but it's an increase in freight demand as the US economy reopens after lockdowns. Waves of baby boomer retirements and the pandemic have made it much worse. So the American Trucking Associations estimate that the US is short of 80,000 truckers, an all-time high for the industry, and if nothing changes, the shortfall could reach 160,000 over the next decade. So it means it's hard to get products from ports to shop shelves, and it's driving up prices for a wide variety of products ahead of the winter holidays. And if you live in Southern California, you'll be aware of this issue at the moment, which is, Long Beach is the major port. It's one of the largest ports in the US. In fact, I think half of all US goods come through the port of Long Beach and then are driven by truck around the United States. It's one of the major US ports. Well, there's about 350 tankers carrying these containers full of goods that are just anchored out in the Pacific Ocean right now. They can't get in. The port recently started operating 24 hours a day, taking on night shift workers to enable these ships to come in and unload. And I was down at the beach at Santa Monica and I was looking out and I could see container ships as far as the eye could see. Hundreds of them. It was like apocalyptic, It really contributed to my emotions at the moment about, the pandemic and the rise of fascism and this whole there's all these container ships on the horizon, and I'm like, wow, it's just amazing to me, really amazing. So we're talking a little bit about how you might be changing your shopping habits this year, and whether or not you feel that your Christmas shopping might change because of climate change. Riyadh says, check out the Lex Friedman podcast. He is a sociologist talking about this issue with the trucks. Thank you, Riyadh. I will. Thank you. The Lex Friedman podcast. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Boris Johnson has been telling people not to sit on their hands about climate change. This is like a developing story at the moment. He returned to COP26. He's, of course, the UK Prime Minister, and negotiations are going into overdrive there to try and secure an ambitious agreement, and he's urged delegates to bridge the gap between long-term goals and immediate action to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius alive. Slightly worried that 1.5 degrees is just not doable. But they've crafted a deal for stronger carbon cutting targets by the end of 2022, apparently. Countries are being urged to strengthen their carbon cutting targets by the end of 2022 in a draft agreement published at the COP26 Glasgow Climate Summit. So there we go. Lex is very important. Lex is a very important person, apparently. He's a big deal. Is that true? Yeah. Oh, I see. That's why the Lex Friedman podcast is so important. I get it now. I need to listen to this. Maybe it'll be the first thing I do when I take these headphones off. I'll put on another pair of headphones. You see? Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, back to this story about the US dealing with a shortage of 80,000 truckers. This is what we've been talking about this morning. By the way, it's 10:15 Pacific, and you're watching Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. We've also been talking about supply chain and why it is that it's so important to get goods on the shelves. And I was mentioning that Joe Biden has had this meeting with the leaders of the CEOs of the top retail establishments to insist that the shelves are full for Christmas. But I was questioning whether or not that in itself goes against climate change pledges, because we're trying to use less plastic, we're trying to buy less goods that have traveled from the other side of the world. So it doesn't really make sense to me, unless, of course, his meeting is like only stock American-made goods. I mean, that would be the solution to this, wouldn't it? Okay, let's move on a little bit with our running order. Let's see what we have here. So much stuff. So much stuff. Never enough time. Now, Volley has a growing list of shows here on Backchannel, including Haley and Allison Live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs and their one-star cinema review. Or you can get inspired with Liv Harrison, who loves finding out the secret behind people's success. Or what about the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, whose program Your Pal Hal directly follows this program at 11 o'clock. That's 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. These are the shows, and you are welcome to watch them live on your Echo Show device. You can also catch up on our YouTube channel, and there's always somebody here to share these Backchannel moments with. So whatever you're doing, wherever you're spending your morning, if you're just home, chilling, hanging out, prepping for some cooking that you're doing later, Backchannel is very useful whilst chopping. Because you don't have to focus your eyes on the screen. You could listen. And then you could just, over your shoulder, you could just say occasionally something and be part of the program. You don't have to type or text or communicate with technology. It's all done with your voice. That's the whole point of Backchannel. Just use your activation word. It's the whatever that word might be. So it's Echo or the default female name. I won't say it because I don't want to set things off in your home, but say that followed by the word say. Say is the magic word, and then your message. And then it comes through to us here on Backchannel. That's kind of how it works. And as you bring your messages to us, Rihanna's here, Riyadh's here, Jessica's here, then I'll bring you into the program and whatever it is you want to say. I've been asking this morning if you're going to change any of your Christmas shopping habits because of the shortage of supply. This is due to the lack of truckers. There's a shortage of 80,000 truckers in the US. But also that number could increase to 160,000, they're saying, because there's just people are not joining that industry. There's a shortage and people do not want to do that job right now. It just doesn't pay enough. The hours are unsociable. And maybe, in the pandemic, people have got used to being at home and being with family and being in a bubble or a pod. And maybe in a roundabout way, it's made us a little bit more thoughtful about what's more important in life. Maybe earning less money and spending more time with our family and our friends. It's just a thought. I mean, it's not the gospel. It's up to you. But you know where I'm going with this. So send me a chat. Just remember that say is the magic word to be part of this. You can say to your device, say, I love this show. And please, when you're saying that, hi, Sean. As I said that, Sean joined the chat. Appreciate you, Sean, in California. Nice to know you're here. And let's have a look at a couple more things, because we were talking earlier, we were talking about signage in local towns. And this was off the back of one town. Where was that town that we were looking at? Was it Missouri? Maybe it was Maryland. We were talking about some signage that was needing to be relocated. It was like classic signage. We were talking a little bit about, iconic and classic signs where you're from. And maybe if you're from a town, somewhere, I don't know, like a small town, mid-state New York, like Utica, maybe there's a sign there that says hotel, and maybe that sign is in itself an important, an important place for you. So we've been looking at some of these. In Gettysburg, South Dakota, there's a wonderful sign that says Gettysburg, where the battle wasn't, which I think is brilliant. It says, when driving up to a small town, the first thing visitors notice is the welcome sign. Every great town has one. Sometimes they're simple and heartwarming. Other times they're pretty straightforward. But in these cases, I have a list here. They perfectly showcase the residents' sense of humor. So let's look at some of the most comical welcome signs from towns across America. And if you have one from your hometown or from wherever you visited, then just let me know. Just say your activation word for your device, then say, and then your message. So there's one here from, where is this? This is so good. Oh, it's in Iowa. It's a town called Gravity, right? The town itself is called Gravity, and the sign says, we're down to earth. If gravity goes, we all go. It's fantastic. And the thing I like about it is it's not like a beautiful sign. It's got a grotty sign, and that's why it's doubly funny. There's one here in Arizona, in Gila Bend, Arizona. And it's a nice big sign. It says, Gila Bend welcomes you, home of 1,917 friendly people and 5 old crabs. 737 feet of elevation. Arizona's solar capital, where solar panels outnumber people in partnership with APS. I love it. I wonder how these signs have evolved over the years. You know, I wonder whether because that sign's on like 5 planks of wood, and I wonder if like they've, you know, changed up some of the jokes over the years. There's a town called Earth in Texas. It's a real town. And guess what their signage says? Very simple. It just says, welcome to Earth. I mean, that's quite radical, isn't it? We should really have a giant one of those. You know, maybe they need to find some desert space somewhere and we could write welcome to Earth in giant letters, you know, in the Mojave or somewhere. Just in case there's like an alien invasion. It would be nice to know that, you know. Yeah. Oh, apparently there's another place in County, Texas. What's that called? Is that called Earth as well? Oh, E-R-A-T-H. Oh, what, the spelling's slightly different. Interesting. It's very easy to confuse Earth with Earth. St. Louis, Oklahoma has got one. It says, welcome to St. Louis, home of 179 friendly people, 1 pyromaniac, and 1 busybody. I love that. I know which one of those I would be. So, yeah, let me know if you have come from a town that had an interesting welcome sign for the people. I also like the goodbye sign, you know, the one that you see in your rearview mirror. Thank you for visiting Earth. Come back soon. I really like those types of signs. Some places that you visit only look good in your rearview mirror. It's always nice to leave a town. Also on the list, we've got one here of Cherryfield in Maine. And it says, welcome to historic Cherryfield, blueberry capital of the world. And, oh, is that the irony? That it's Cherryfield and it's a blueberry capital? I get it now. I get it. It should be called Blueberry Field. I get it. Very clever. And then in Iowa, there's a place called Mallard. And their sign says, welcome to Mallard. And then underneath it says, we're friendly ducks. And on the top, there's a giant duck. The biggest mallard you've ever seen. So this is what it's like to live in rural America. You know, you get to brand your local town. You get to give it its character. There's actually a town in Georgia called Santa Claus. And there says, welcome to Santa Claus, the city that loves children. And then obviously there's a photograph of Santa Claus. We were talking about him yesterday because it's not far off now, you know. The whole Christmas thing is really like ramping up. And this is what I love about living in America. The moment one holiday festival is over, the shops are suddenly full of the next one. And it could be like 5 months in between, but it's like once Easter is over, they will literally fill the stores with the next holiday season merchandise and decorations. And I'm like, is Thanksgiving really just like that close? It's like, no, it's in 5 months' time, but that's the next one. People like to start shopping early, and some people do. I've always been a very last-minute type of person, until more recently, since I started shopping exclusively online. But when I was younger, I would go to a big department store, and I'd go on Christmas Eve, because there was a pressure to get it all done, and the shop was open until 11 o'clock at night, and so you would just keep going until they kicked you out and hoped that you got everybody. And then you'd get out and you'd remember there was one uncle. I forgot about him. And you'd end up just washing a pair of your own socks and wrapping them up. Family, eh? 10:26. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. It's the Anthony Davis Show. I'm here between 9 and 11 weekdays Pacific. That's 12 till 2 Eastern. So wherever you are in the US, you're welcome to the program. We've been discussing those lovely welcome signs in your local hometowns, and you've been telling me about them, and Riyadh's with us, Jessica's here, Sean's here, Rihanna's here, and you can be too. You join the show by introducing yourself to your Amazon Echo Show device. If you've never done it before, you just ask it to open Backchannel. It'll ask you your name and where you're from, and that's it, all done. And from that point onwards, whenever you ask your Echo Show device to open Backchannel, you don't have to reintroduce yourself. You can just interact with any of the shows on Backchannel just by chatting. Very, very easy. Completely interactive and completely hands-free. Completely hands-free. Very clever. And if you don't have an Amazon device, then you can listen to us on YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube. You can see the stream. You can see me sitting here in this sponge box and think to yourself, at least I'm not in that sponge box. I'm wearing a sweater today, and it was a big mistake. And I managed to get, there's only half an hour left of this program. I have a feeling I'm going to be able to get through the show with 2 layers. Look at that, look. Such is the contrast of this camera that there is really no difference between the top layer and the second layer. It's I feel like I'm in a green screen space. Except I've green screened on another black t-shirt underneath a black sweatshirt. Alaska has got a town called Hyder, and it's a very haunted town, and their sign is the friendliest ghost town in Alaska. There it is. It's on the border with Canada. A little ghost town. Is it a ghost town because nobody's there? I guess it is. It's probably one of those towns where there is nobody living, so they've called it a ghost town. Interesting. So yeah, where have you come from? What is your hometown's, what is the signage in and out of your hometown? We've been talking about that. We've been talking about Christmas and how you might be adjusting your Christmas gift shopping this year because of supply chain issues. A lack of 80,000 truckers has prevented all of these goods that we would normally see on the shelves from being on the shelves. I've been asking if it's the case that you yourself would change your shopping habits for climate change. Riyadh says, not my hometown, but Reno is the biggest little city on Earth. That's true. Isn't Reno like a gambling town? Is that right? I kind of think it's isn't it like a mini Vegas or a bigger Vegas? I seem to think that Reno is, but, correct me if I'm wrong. Riyadh in the usual, yes, thank you. That's what I needed. A little positive affirmation. It's a little gambling town. Yeah, you go there and you lose a whole lot of money, and then you kind of come back and regret it. Riyadh says it's like a little mini rundown happy Vegas. Isn't Vegas supposed to be the happiest place on Earth? Isn't it supposed to be I've only been there once, and I was it's so different to how I imagined Las Vegas. Because the Strip, I presume that was 2 cars in each direction. The Strip in Vegas is 8 lanes in both directions. There's 16 lanes of traffic. It blew my mind. Riyadh says Vegas is the saddest place on Earth. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm sure some people must win there. Not everybody goes there and loses. There must be some winners. I like the old bit of Vegas, the old town, just downtown. Binions and just the old town. It's kind of feels like more old world, Although it's quite nice I've met people who've told me they've gone to Venice, and what they actually meant is they went to the Venetian and just sat on a gondola in the Venetian and just sailed around with a fake sky. And they're like, yeah, I've done Venice. It's very interesting. I mean, it is very accurate. The only problem, and this is something like exclusive to America, isn't it? That a bit like Disneyland, everything's so shiny and clean. It's a bit like when George Lucas made them rough up all of the spaceships in Star Wars and the costumes, like make them battle worn, look like they're dirty. I wish that in Vegas they would make the St. Mark's Square in Venice look as dirty as it really is. I wish there'd be like pigeon poop and smush on the walls. It's so clean. It's like brand new Venice. And that for me is the one thing. Like the water is so clean. The water should be dirty. It's so clean. It should smell a little as well. But it is kind of magical there. I mean, the one thing about Vegas that really keeps people coming back, I think, is the all-you-can-eat buffet. That's really the thing that keeps people coming back. If you gamble, you'll eat for free and stay for free. Riyadh says they should add 2,000 pigeons to the Venetian just to make it realistic. I love the fact that the pigeons would probably look up and see the sky and then be like, I'm off. And then they'd like hit the ceiling a little bit like in the Truman Show. Because that's really what it is. It's like, it's indoor outdoors. And the fake sky is so believable. You look up and you're like, is that real? It's like a perfect blue. And the way it just disappears into the distance, it's just perfect. It's just like the Truman Show, which I only watched recently for the first time. And I was like, this might be the best film I've ever seen. It's so ahead of its time. Do you sometimes feel like we're like living in the Truman Show? Do you feel like that? The fact that, with Instagram, social media, all of this kind of, connected world now. People say, oh, I see you went to so-and-so, and you're like, really? And they're like, yeah, it's on your Instagram. And you're like, oh, yeah, I can't remember posting that picture, but yeah, like, I feel like we are living in this kind of dystopian future where everybody knows what we're doing. I mean, I was thinking about how many cameras. I'm going to count the cameras that are looking at me right now. I mean, I know there's one that we're talking with, but there's one there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 cameras in this room because I just forgot about the phone in my pocket. That actually has 2 cameras on it. So there's 7 cameras here. 7 cameras looking at me right now. Isn't that crazy? There are cameras in devices we didn't even realize had cameras. That's the crazy thing about this world that we're living in. So that's where this living in the Truman Show is really coming true. Everywhere you look. Do you remember the way he does that in the movie? He kind of looks and it's like, is that a camera? Like looks in the refrigerator and there's a lens there and he's looking at it. So clever. Thank you for all of your messages, Rihanna, Riyadh, Jessica, Sean, spending your morning with us here on Backchannel. I'm Anthony. Hal's up next. Don't forget, he'll be here at 11 o'clock. All right, let's move on to a couple more things to talk about because we've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, and I'm very interested in this story about advice. We haven't really talked about this yet, have we? This kind of advice story. But the Nobel laureate might be the best known as the author of The East of Eden, The Grapes of Wrath, and Of Mice and Men. This is John Stybeck, of course. Steinbeck, but he was also a prolific letter writer, and among his correspondence is a beautiful response to his eldest son Tom's 1958 letter in which the teenage boy confesses to have fallen desperately in love with a girl named Susan whilst at boarding school. So there's a little excerpt here from the letter, and I thought I would read it to you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about getting advice from parents, because, I mean, if your father was John Steinbeck, you'd probably be like, okay, I'm just going to listen to what he has to say. You'd probably be like, I think he's got this. But if you've got parents who are, compromised, I'm saying that in the nicest possible way, then you're going to be more like, I'm not listening to this. Anyway, here's an excerpt from this lovely letter that the Nobel laureate wrote to his son. And it goes like this. We had your letter this morning. I will answer it from my point of view, and of course Elaine will from hers. That's referring to Mummy Stybeck. First, if you are in love, that's a good thing. That's about the best thing that can happen to anyone. Don't let anyone make it small or light to you. Second, there are several kinds of love. One is a selfish, mean, grasping, egotistical thing which uses love for self-importance. This is the ugly and crippling kind. The other is an outpouring of everything good in you, of kindness and consideration and respect. Not only the social respect of manners, but the greater respect which is recognition of another person as unique and valuable. The first kind can make you sick and small and weak, but the second can release you in strength, and courage and goodness, and even wisdom that you didn't know you had. Isn't that amazing? Imagine getting that as a letter from a parent when you're like inquiring about your first love. I mean, my dad wouldn't even remember any of the names of my girlfriends. Like, he did it on purpose. He just didn't want to know. I don't think he wanted to endorse me having relationships. So he purposely... And my friend Sheba, who I never dated, she'd met him a few times and they kind of got on quite well. So he genuinely thought that all of my girlfriends were called Sheba. He would call them Sheba. That's how little interest he took in the early relationships. Such a shame. Anyway, Sheba thought it was hilarious. Other girlfriends were like, who is this Sheba? Are you cheating on me? No, it's just my daddy just won't remember anybody's name. So throughout his life, John Stybeck constantly wrote honest and revealing letters to family and friends, his editor, and a circle of equally well-known and influential public figures. So I just wondered if you ever received letters from family, really like special letters from someone in your family, great advice. Did you write letters? Maybe you wrote to family members yourself. Maybe you communicated with relationships and romances on paper rather than the modern way where you just send an emoji, a yellow face with hearts for eyes. It's not really enough these days. Use your words. The language is so beautiful. And maybe you like writing. Maybe you just keep a journal. Maybe, this is something we need to bring back. I'm really worried that, as Facebook creates the metaverse, it's getting further and further away from that kind of analog place where we could write in a journal and communicate through the English language. There's so many words to use. There's so much to say. And yet it all gets reduced just to an LOL. Lol. It's 10:38. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Coming up at 11, your pal Hal. So stick around for him. He's got a lot to say. I was thinking about Hal the other day because I was watching him, and he's very clever, because I'm perched on the end of this chair. Hal sits like this. Hal's got it down. He's not spewing any energy other than from his mouth. He's so in his chair, reclining. And I was like, that is genius, Hal. Because I'm exhausted from sitting in this perched position for 2 hours. Hal's is Hal a New Yorker? He sounds like he might be. Maybe it's a New York thing. Maybe you just have to kick back. I mean, if I do the show like this, do you think I could get away with that? Maybe I'll bring the microphone a little closer. Here we go. There we go. Now you're talking. This is what it's all about. Why didn't I think of this earlier? I'm going to have to adjust my focus now. I'm going to have to turn on the autofocus because otherwise I think I'm well out of focus. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Adjustments. There we go. All right. Because I'm a long way away now, and I really... There we go. Has that made a difference? Okay. Now we can... This is now like your pal Anthony. This is how it's going to be from now on. Just kick him back. I might have to do something about this. It's gigantic. So heavy. I have not got my tap shoes on today, incidentally. Carla, the producer in England, just asked me that question in my ear, and I'm telling you that today I'm wearing what I would refer to as a carpet slipper. I don't know if you're aware of these, but once you get to a certain age, a carpet slipper, it means you don't really need carpet. It's like having 2 pieces of carpet tile attached to each foot, and you just shuffle around in your carpet slipper, and life is just so much more relaxing. Man, am I relaxed now. Hal's got this down. I need to do something about it. Where am I going to put this thing? I bet Hal below the desk is probably wearing, I don't know. I mean, I don't know him, but I've got to know him a little bit over the last few days from watching his show on Backchannel. I don't think he's got anything on from the waist down, to be honest. Maybe just a pair of slippers. And that's it. Just nothing else. That man is cool. He'll be here in like 19 minutes. So you can decide for yourself when that happens. Thank you for joining the stream. Jay's just joined. Is it JJ? I'm assuming it's JJ. Love to know where you are, so let me know, JJ, and we'll, give you a shout out. But thank you very much for joining the stream, being part of Backchannel this morning. It's 90 minutes before 11. I'm Anthony Davis. It's the Anthony Davis Show here on Backchannel, which is weekdays between 9 and 11. And just so you know, there's a whole bunch of other shows. Haley and Allison live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs and their 1-star cinema review. You can get inspired with Liv Harrison, who loves finding out the secret behind people's successes. And of course, the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, whose program Your Pal Hal directly follows this show at 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We've been talking a little bit about supply chain this morning and how Christmas shopping this year is going to be different. It's just going to be different. They say Americans' cost of living is rising faster than it has for 3 decades, with food and fuel driving the increases. Well, the Consumer Prices Index for October showed prices rose 6.2% over the last 12 months. It makes a sharp jump from September, when prices were already rising at 5.4%. Inflation has been a growing concern for shoppers and policymakers this year as the impact of the pandemic persists. Rising prices for food, shelter, used cars and trucks and new vehicles were among the larger contributions, according to the Bureau for Labor Statistics. I mean, the shortage of microchips really interests me, because who knew that cars had microchips in? They do. I mean, most cars, I'm not just talking about electric cars, all cars, they have microchips in them. They have intelligent engines. And so when you take your car to be serviced, they plug in a diagnostics machine into the car computer, and the car tells the machine what's wrong with it. So instead of having to inspect it, that's how they service a car now. It's like, mind-blowing. So microchips in vehicles is an issue. And that's why there's this shortage of new cars. And then the bottlenecks in the supply of some goods is going to mean that the shelves at Christmas are going to be that much emptier. But I was making the point earlier, and I want to go back to it because I really do think it's very important that Joe Biden, on one hand, is pushing for carbon emission reduction. And then on the other hand, he's threatening Walmart and Target and the large, retailers and saying you've got to make sure that supply is there at Christmas. And my point is that maybe he should say, actually, let's not make sure that the shelves are stacked. Let's go without. Let's make more effort to reduce emissions by not buying stuff that we simply don't need. And, that's why I buy from the Amazon warehouse, because it's all used goods or return stock or stuff that otherwise has already been in the supply chain and has been returned. It's just my little contribution to the bigger picture. So how do you do yours? What little bits do you do? Are you prepared to make sacrifices this holiday season? And will you maybe be telling your friends and family that you won't be buying them presents and gifts because of the climate crisis? It's a real thing. It's also a very good excuse for not buying people presents. But you are still very welcome to receive. You can receive but not give. It's the modern values. A shortage of staff has also prompted employers to raise wages in some sectors too, which has also fed into higher prices. And even excluding the cost of food and fuel, which tend to be more volatile, prices were rising strongly at 4.6%. So, inflation is on the rise. Cost of goods, cost of living, cost of cars, shortage of products. I mean, these are very interesting times. And going back to politics for a second, Biden is going to take the blame for a lot of this stuff. And it's not his fault. He's only been the president for 11 months. And, these things take 2 years to evolve, to actually, for the supply chain to be delayed in this way. Oil has been sitting in barrels. It's very interesting to me that how the whole problem that we have with supply is going to be landed on Biden. I mean, it is his responsibility to try and deal with it, but he's definitely going to take the blame, and it will definitely affect his, re-election campaign. So we're talking about this morning, and if you'd like to join me, just 10 minutes left of this program. So if you want to join in, then now's the time. You can talk to your device, just say the activation word, whether that be Echo or the default female name, and then the word say. Say is the magic word, which allows you and I to communicate. Just say your message after the word say, and then it'll appear right here, and you can be part of the show. So Jay's here, Riyadh's here, Jessica's here, Sean's here, and Rihanna's here as well. So thank you very much for spending your morning with Backchannel and with me. My name's Anthony. It's the Anthony Davis Show, weekdays from 9 a.m. Pacific. Let's take a look at some more of the action that's happening. Got so much stuff here in front of us that we've been talking about. We were mentioning earlier the subpoenas from the Select Committee officials with close ties to the former president been subpoenaed. We covered that story. We were also looking at the front of the New York Times. This was all connected with Trump losing the effort to keep papers secret. A federal judge on Tuesday night, last night, rejected a bid by the former president to keep secret papers about his actions and conversations leading up to and during the January 6 attack on the Capitol by his supporters. I mean, it does beg the question, if he's got nothing to hide, why keep it secret? Well, what's the big deal? If he didn't say anything that was going to incriminate him, then surely everyone can see it. We were looking through various newspapers earlier, and we were talking about young people and especially women getting jobs in engineering, and we were looking at construction classes in high school. It's just like a little recap of what we've been discussing in this program, in case it chimes with you and you would like to join us tomorrow when we'll be discussing different but similar subjects. Because the things that really interest me are the things that make the world go round. The reason that life is the way it is. And the reason that things are more expensive, and the reason that, there's just so much happening in the world right now. And I really feel like we have a say, like we actually can alter the direction that the country and the rest of the world is going. I actually feel like we have some control. And some people say, oh, well, this has nothing to do with me. What difference would it make? What do I know? Like my vote or my activism, it's not going to make any difference. Are you kidding me? Like, this is the time now to change the course of history. And through all of these stories, they're all connected in so many ways. We were talking about anxiety rising with COVID outbreaks in classrooms earlier. There was a story on the front of the Winnipeg Free Press that we were talking about earlier. There is this thing called collective responsibility. We touched on it a little bit yesterday, and I really feel that this is at the very heart of everything we should be doing now. And this goes back to Biden and his conversations with the bosses of Walmart and Target, and I just wonder if it occurred to him or to his advisors that actually he should be saying to them, But the problem is jobs are at stake. That's really the issue, isn't it? Because the supply chain is all about workers. So this is why it's such a difficult balancing act for him. Because he has to keep us gainfully employed, but at the same time he has to do his bit for climate. And maybe this is the fault of capitalism. Maybe this is the problem. And this is why I'm a big advocate of a thing called UBI. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's Universal Basic Income. It's where we basically all get paid for not going to work. Right? It's a whole concept. They're trialing it in certain parts of California and various states around the US. Universal basic income. Some, I think, Scandinavian countries have successfully done it. And you don't have to worry about supply chain anymore. You can make a living by not working. The reason the economy keeps moving is because you're spending. They effectively giving you money to invest into the economy. It's called UBI. Look it up. It's a very interesting kind of progressive concept, and it works. And so for these small towns, these small former mining towns or coal towns, that were typically Trump-supporting towns, if they got universal basic income, it would solve all of their problems. It's almost like they're voting for the wrong side. Anyway, it's just something to think about. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit more tomorrow. But it's definitely something that is a very... You really have to open your mind to something like that, because it's not a government handout. That's not what it is. It's not welfare. It's just a different way of running the economy. And it's basically there's enough tax dollars to give back to everybody and actually pay them a living wage. Very interesting. Okay, just a couple of minutes left. So I just want to thank you for spending your morning with me here on Backchannel. I'll come back tomorrow and we'll do it again. We'll sit in a similar environment to this. One day I'll be caught short. I won't be able to make it here in time and I'll be in a Starbucks or something and you'll just have to cut me some slack. But for right now, I coincidentally, this space is the same color as the brand. And so that was a coincidence. I'm very happy about that. Blue and yellow and black. Welcome to Backchannel. It's all about the color scheme. Your pal Hal is on the way, just a couple of minutes. I'm not sure what he's talking about today, but I'm sure it will be suitably laid back in a very kind of chilled out, reclined kind of fashion. Not like me, scrabbling for apocalyptic stories and the end of the world and how we have to rise up. This is the beauty of the different hosts throughout the day on Backchannel. Pick your favorite. Actually, don't pick your favorite. That's unfair. And if I was to mark this show, I would definitely give it a 10 out of 10 for today, but mainly because of that sequence where we talked about John Stybeck writing that letter to his son about falling in love. For me, that was the icing on the Backchannel cake today. And if you want to review that, go back. You can watch it back on YouTube. That letter that he wrote was very moving for me. I really felt quite moved by that because, to try and describe love in uncertain terms is very difficult, to actually comprehend what it is and what it means. And, to have the poet laureate doing it as your father is not a bad way to kind of be introduced to your first love affair. In this case, it was with a woman called Susan. And who can't love someone called Susan? And the reason we talked about it is because it actually is the anniversary of that very letter. It was written on this day, the 10th of November. And so here we are, all these years later, celebrating a letter written by hand and given from a father to a son. That's today's lesson. That was part of today's sermon. I'm Anthony Davis. Thank you very much for joining me this morning and for spending your morning with Backchannel. Don't go anywhere because Backchannel continues with your pal Hal. Yes, Hal Rudnick is next.